this game was very exciting. I was in control for most of the game until I wasn't. Tournament details in the description below. And I was entering this round with 1 out of 3, and it was already my worst tournament ever. At least one of my worst tournament performances ever. So it couldn't get much worse going into the 4th round. That being said, I still wanted to win. So I play e4, he plays a Sicilian, and I go for my somewhat normal knight c3 setup. I say somewhat normal because that's what I like to play a lot of the time. And he plays e6. And the opening, so I play d4, striking in the center. It's kind of an unconventional opening because I'm bringing my queen out early and then letting it be a target for the knight. So he develops with tempo. Um, it's unconventional for that reason, but it's an opening that I like to play. And actually, it's an opening I've played twice against an international master. So I'll put a card up for that video. And sure enough, Michael plays the exact same way Richard Wang played against me. Queen c7, controlling this diagonal, preventing this bishop from going on this diagonal. And I decide to challenge his queen on this diagonal. Of course, if you go bishop d6, then I could definitely consider taking this g-pawn. And you would have to defend your rook by moving the bishop, and I am up a pawn at the very least. And who knows, maybe I don't even need to take the g7 pawn. But you would definitely have to calculate that if you did go bishop d6. Okay. So I'm challenging his queen on this diagonal, and he trades. And now he goes a6. I go bishop e3. And I think my game against Richard, he played knight f6, and I played f3. And then he played bishop b4, I think. And he played for a quick d5. I'm pretty sure that's what Richard did. I think maybe he played b5 first and then bishop b4. Doesn't really matter. But Mike, my opponent. Oh wait, let me add in those names real quick. And Mike Cook. He was 16. He's in the like mid 1600s ish range. Anyways, so Mike does something slightly different. He goes b5 immediately, and then now goes knight f6. And I respond by solidifying my center. If I don't solidify my center and I go, like, for example, bishop e2, that would probably be a bad move because of b4 and knight takes. So that's why I solidify my center with f3, and it also prepares potentially g4, and the pawn on f3 also prevents the knight from getting to g4. So f3, just a very, very useful move in this position. And he continues developing like normal. So he definitely prioritized developing the queen side. And now I play g4. And actually this position, like, because he didn't prioritize the d5 pawn break, he can't do it. Like, for example, like, I have a really nice grip on the d5 square. And a lot of times, maybe not in every Sicilian position, but in a lot of Sicilian positions, if you can get d5 in successfully as black, that's usually very good. And so that was kind of the one thing that was on my mind, was that in this position, he's not getting d5 in. He's just not. So I felt pretty confident in my position. And now g4, there's actually no way for him to stop me from kicking out his knight. And his knight controls the d5 square. And if he needs to move his knight back, like, he already moved it. And like, so he's going to be wasted. So I'm going to gain a lot of space by pushing this pawn to g5. And even though these pawns are doubled, I'm really using it to my advantage. Like, this rook is on a nice open file. This pawn is going forward and there's no way to stop it. For example, h6, g5. And this pawn is pinned because if he did take, he would lose his rook. So maybe, and a move like g6, although it would support the knight, like, this just looks ugly. This looks extremely ugly. And I'm probably going to go knight g e2 and then g4 and kick the knight out anyways. So, anyways, so g4, I feel like my position is very, very good. I would, if I had to guess the computer evaluation. By the way, no engine recap, but we look at the game review at the very, very end, so you get my unfiltered thoughts, whether it's correct or not, and we get to compare it against what the engine thinks at the very end. So hopefully we both learn a thing or two. Anyways, so I played g4, felt very good about my position, and he just castles, and I play g5, and he goes back to g8. And in this position, probably after he castles, I was playing very quickly because I just lost my last game. I tend to play very quickly when I lose a game because I am sad and upset. And anyways, I play bishop b6, getting his rook off the diagonal. And once again, I'm kind of removing pieces from d5. I probably don't need to play the move bishop b6, attacking his rook, forcing it to move to the e file. I don't think it's bad. Like it's definitely not a bad move. Like I love how it cuts off the king from going to c7. I love how it makes I love how it comes with tempo, but I probably don't need to do it. Anyways, now I play f4. F4 controls the e5 square. So if I played knight ge2, for example, well, maybe he could maybe play knight e5, and he might even want to be hopping into c4. So that could be a possibility. Also, f4 opens up the square for my knight to go to f3. Now the knight can no longer go to g4. So actually, it's totally okay if I loosen the g4 square because nothing can take advantage of the square in the first place. And I'm gaining more space in the center. And in the game, after b4, tickling my knight, making it move, he plays e5. And because my pawn was already on f4, now I can advance it even further. And look how beautiful these two pawns side by side are. And like it's really hard to attack them, and they really take up a lot of space. One thing that I was considering for him in this position is f6. And now if I take, he gets his knight out, and now he's doing what he really wants to do, which is get his pieces out. So I thought he would go for this. I think white is still slightly better, but probably not by much. I don't have to take. I could go knight f3. So then if he does take, now I take with the knight again, and I'm threatening to trap his rook. I could definitely do that. But he probably would go knight f6 still. And now if I go here, this pawn is defended by the knights, and I'm not sure what I'm doing. Although, I guess I am kind of looking at the d6 square, so maybe I could go e5. And after the knight moves, maybe I can someday get my knight to d6. For example, if I try to tickle the knight, make it move. Although I have to be careful about my pawns being overextended. I have to be very careful about that. Anyways, I did not think too much of, I did not think that deep in the position. There you go. But he did not go f6. And so he went e5, and I meet it with f5, and now I am never going to not have a crap ton of space. This felt very good. It's very, very good. And it's gonna be, and even though this pawn is pretty kind of weak, there's no real way to take advantage of it now. Like for example, if he wants to attack this e4 pawn, he has to move this knight. But where do you move this knight? Like for example, knight d8. Then I could even just go, maybe even just bishop d3, perhaps. And then maybe I'm going to play knight h3 and knight f2 to defend the pawn. Or maybe still knight f3. I'm not sure. Maybe even bring my king over to e3, potentially. I'm not sure. But this pawn, even though it is kind of hard to defend, it's not the easiest to attack. And if you do try to attack it, you're wasting time by moving your other pieces backwards. Okay. So he plays e5. Then he plays bishop e7, attacking this pawn. And I play knight f3 to defend. He could go for this interesting move, knight d4. If I do take with the knight, then he takes his pawn with check. And then I take back in the center, but then he wins another pawn. So this is probably not what I want at all. But in this position, if he did play knight d4, I could just take with the bishop, whoops, and play like this. And this is probably at least okay for me. I mean, I'm up a pawn at the very least, and I have so much space on the king side, so this is probably okay. But after knight f3, he plays f6. And he's playing very, very fast, and I start slowing down. I start slowing down a lot. I'm just adjusting my headphones here. And I start slowing down a lot. I think here I'm still feeling relatively fast. I play g6. He plays h6. And look at how cramped Black's position is. Like this, look how bad this bishop is. This is not what Black wants. I play bishop c4, developing my last minor piece on this nice diagonal. I could consider bishop d5, potentially, not quite sure yet. And since his position is so cramped, he does what he should do, and which is trade off minor pieces. Having a cramped position doesn't matter nearly as much if there are no more pieces left to be cramped. So puts his bishop there, and I decide to take. I don't have to take. I could play a move like bishop d5 or bishop d3, preparing to double. I could do moves like that. Because if he does ever take, then I can check. And let's say he moves here or here. Actually, he can't go here because this pawn would be hanging. Actually, this pawn is hanging no matter what. Yeah, actually, the more I think about it, maybe I should have gone rook here because he can never take because this pawn is undefended. I actually missed that detail. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have taken the bishop, actually. Because it's really hard to add more defenders to this pawn. Because his position is so cramped. Okay, I should not have taken his bishop on d8. That was an inaccuracy. Okay. But instead I do take, and then I move my knight. I really wanted to get my knight to c5, so I kind of forced the issue. But that was obviously not as good. And he plays knight b8. So even though he did trade off a piece, both of his knights are still on the back rank. And he plays knight b8 to defend his a6 pawn. I don't think he had to do that. I think he could have just played a5 immediately. I don't really see the issue with this move. So I'm not sure why he didn't play it. But needless to say, he goes knight b8. I go rook d6. And now I'm attacking upon the third time. So now he pushes, and now I double up. So this was kind of my plan when I traded bishops. But the issue is, like, so what? You have more space in the set on the king side. So what? You know, like, Black is well defended, and he just develops his knight, and this is when I really started tanking. I was like, because I was trying, like, I knew I had a good position. I just didn't know if I could actually squeeze anything out of it. So it was kind of frustrating in that sense. I decided to take and then go bishop b5. And I thought this was a decent try. Another thing I was considering here and I was trying to make work was knight takes d7. Because if knight takes, well, now bishop e6. Or I could even, if I want to, take like this and then bishop e6. But bishop c6. And I was like, I'm not getting anywhere. Like, this is not good. But I did think about it for at least a minute. I also thought about things like this. And I was like, no, there's no way that works. Unless. So, yeah, I thought about dumb stuff like that. But I ended up taking on b7 and playing bishop b5. And he's defending perfectly fine. And so I felt like everything was petering out, and he got out of any sense of danger I mustered up. And I really wanted to go move my knight to c4 or b3 and add another attacker, but if I did go knight d2, he could just take my rook. And that didn't look very good. So that's why I went rook d3. The issue is, he played a move that I didn't think was possible. d5. And I was like, oh no. Like, my heart like stopped for a second. Firstly, I have like 5 minutes and he has like 30 minutes. And I was like, I'm down on time again. I had a good position and I messed it up again. And oh man, dude, I was not happy. I was not happy. And but you just gotta calculate. You just calculate. I was calculating for a long time on pawn takes. Because if e4, there's a fork. But then I fork. And if you go here, then I take here. And if you take here, well now I take here. And this could be good because if I go here and you go here and you go here and I go here and now I'm up a piece. Yay, that's awesome. And then but then I was like, but then what if he doesn't do that? What if he goes like here first? Well now then I go here and then he could go here and I go here and I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, wait a second, why am I calculating all those things? He would just go here. And I have doubled isolated G pawns. They are huge weaknesses. He could either blockade my passed pawn with his knight, or he could blockade it with his king maybe. He might even try to bring his other knight back in the game and target this pawn. I was like, this is bad news bears. This is not good. This is not good. And then I was like, okay, I think I found the solution, G4. I think it's okay. Because after pawn takes and we trade off all of the rooks, now I go knight d2 attacking the pawn. And after the game, we kind of talked a bit, and I think he overestimated the power of his extra pawn. Because, I mean, I could go knight c4, and he would push again, and I would attack, and I'm going to win this pawn. But and yeah, like sure, this pawn is hanging too, so he's actually going to, and if he defends that, maybe this isn't so, like he's still up a pawn at least for now. But the thing is, I don't have to do all that. After e3, I don't have to attack this pawn. I don't have to address this pawn at all, because if the pawn ever does get to e2, well, I can just go king d2. And actually, your knights aren't really threatening me. They're actually kind of far behind as of right now. And even if you do get a knight to f4, which he does in the game, it doesn't help him promote. And if he does get a knight to help it promote, well, now he's got to guard the d2 square in the first place. So there's no way for him to really threaten promotion. So I don't have to address the pawn until it gets to e2. And by then, he has invested a lot into that pawn. So I was not worried about it. And the thing is, after knight e4, he made a crucial mistake in this position. Maybe this position is still fine for him objectively. I'm not sure. He goes knight d5. And the reason why I say I think he makes a crucial mistake, because now I go knight d6. And he never gets this knight on b8 out of the game. For example, so this is the one way that play could progress. Firstly, I'm threatening a fork to win this pawn. But more importantly, he plays knight f4, and I actually attack this g7 pawn, and there's no way he could possibly defend it. So actually, I think here, one thing he could do is play h5. This is what I thought he might do in the game. Actually, I think in this position, I thought he would play h5 here. Attacking my pawn, and if I do take, now he takes here. And maybe he can go knight g3, attacking this pawn, and maybe trying to help him promote. Also, wait, the knight on f5 actually guards the d6 square, so I can't even go to the d6 square. So I think he had to go h5. Not 100% sure, but I think he had to go h5. But instead, he goes knight d4, or no, sorry, knight d5, which is also a mistake. So I think h5 was a good move. I also think knight c6 was a good move, because his knight needs to get off the back rank with the help of the other knight. And if I go knight d6, he could just move his king if he wants to. Maybe, or maybe knight here, for example. Although that blunders a fork, so probably not that. So maybe you move your knight again, attacking the bishop. And of course, a move like this would blunder the game away. So you have to go like bishop, bishop. Maybe like bishop here to go here, for example. So yeah, something like this could work, maybe. So, anyways, so I think there are at least a couple other different moves that don't make the game losing. But in this position, well, maybe knight d5 isn't losing, but definitely does not feel good. That's for sure. And I think one way to try to not lose this pawn is to go king e7, so you can meet knight e8 with king f8. So you're defending this pawn, and everything is fine for now. And then maybe you still go h5 in the future and take this pawn. But look at how this knight is dominated. Like, this knight is on b8. Like, this bishop, 3 squares in front of this knight, completely dominates this knight. And this is bad news bears. Like, this is not good. Another thought that came to my mind was after knight d6, I guess you could go knight d7. I did not see this resource, to be honest. Yeah, knight c7 attacking the bishop. That's an interesting idea. Maybe after my bishop back, now this pawn is hanging on a5 still. But the knight on c7 does guard the d8 square. But maybe black just wants to get their other knight out. And maybe I don't care if you take this pawn, because I'm getting my king in as soon as possible. Maybe this was the way for black to play. Maybe. I'm not entirely sure. I did not see that knight c7 resource at all during the game. But luckily, Mike was still playing very fast. And I was very low on time. So, once again, and I'll play knight e8. And I think he was expecting me to address the knight coming here to push the pawn. Because something like this, like maybe he was expecting something like this. But no, I don't have to address this pawn at all. I can just go knight e8, and now I'm winning. At least I'm pretty sure I'm winning. And now he moves towards the pawn. But by now it's too little too late, and I play knight h5. And I think he resigns here. I stopped notating, so I think he resigns here. But I was also low on time, so I don't know for sure. But yeah, I win the game. If you accept the knight trade, this is just simply winning. You are never going to move this knight off the edge of the board. And if you do move your king closer, okay, sure. You just lost the game. So he can never take the knight. And if you're not taking the knight, for example, you could push, but I'm going to defend. And like, what is there to even do? Like, if you do go knight d5 at some point, I could push. And if you guard the promotion square, I can pin you. And yeah, this position is just losing. There's not much moves to do for black. So with that, I won my final game of the tournament. This is the 4th round, and it was the final round. And yeah, I finished 2 points out of 4, and it was my worst tournament ever. Maybe not ever, but objectively rating wise, I went from 1939 to 1901 with that loss to the 1375, and that was brutal. I just have this issue where I'm trying to play good chess when I should be playing good chess. Wait, did I just phrase that right? I'm trying to play great chess when I'm trying to play good chess. Or maybe I'm trying to play good chess when I should be playing okay chess. Because I am just lacking. I'm lacking in these when I'm making quick moves. I'm just not managing my time well. And but that being said, it's only one tournament. Like, it's not the end of the world. And I think I'm going to do better next time. Hopefully it's not as horrible as this time, that's for sure. But I hope to do better next time. And yeah, so subscribe for more videos like this. And it's time for game review time. Let's go.